Uh, I want to talk a bit about your journey, how it all developed, because if I haven't got it wrong, like your music journey and like posting and stuff like that started during like first, second lockdown during the pandemic. You started like, growing your audience. Can you tell us a bit about how that developed?
Yeah, so um, when the pandemic hit, when it was like everyone went into lockdown, I was living in Manchester and I was living on my own. I was renting a place, but I was also saving to buy my own apartment. And I felt like I was kind of trying to save this money, but then spending rent and not being able to actually go anywhere or do anything in Manchester. So I moved back to Bradford with some friends, and one of them was a DJ, and he had the decks out, and we just all mess around and learn to DJ. But it kind of happened accidentally. Like, had there not been that lockdown, I don't think we'd be having this conversation, or maybe not at this time. It might have happened later on, but I think I'm a big believer in being in the right place at the right time, and I think that that's kind of what happened there.
So before pandemic, you were not involved in music at all.
I was a raver and I was a punter, and I
Hmm.
would go out to all the events, and a lot of the people that inspired me to learn, I would be going and watching them DJ. But then I think, but after the lockdown, I wasn't even in the headspace to take it seriously and to think this is something that I could do for a career. But then I feel like I just kind of I had this thought where I was like, I'm not getting any younger. Like, I'd been working in recruitment for 10 years, and I was unsure about where my career in recruitment was going to go at that point. So I kind of I call it my quarter life crisis, where I decided to just pack in the job that I've been doing for 10 years. I was successful at recruitment, but I felt like I needed a change, and I wanted to have a job that didn't feel like work. Like, I still love going out and playing music, and it doesn't feel like I'm working. It doesn't feel like I should be getting paid to do it.
And when did you feel that first break happened, or like when did you have that realization that, oh, this might actually be happening?
Um, it's hard to think when that could be, because there's probably a few things that pop out in my memory for that. So um, actually, the first ever set that I played was for Not Bad for a Girl, and they have an open decks for their birthday, like pretty much every year. And it was really strange how this happened. And again, I think I was in the right place at the right time, because I used to recruit software engineers, and one of the girls in Not Bad for a Girl is a software engineer, and I'd kind of spoken to her about a potential job. And then we got speaking about music, and she was like, "Oh, we've got an open decks happening in 3 weeks' time or whatever." She was like, "How about send a mix, and if we like it, then we'll get you on." But that again happened in my recruitment job. I wasn't even like going into it in the headspace of I want to get a set out of it. It just kind of happened. But that was actually the first set that I ever played. That was, in fact, it was 2 years ago yesterday.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was like I remember it was like the 14th of April 23, I think.
Oh yeah,
And that was
literally.
the first time like playing to a crowd, basically. So yeah, I would say that that was probably the first sort of break, because it was the first time I'd ever played to a crowd, and it kind of happened organically through a
Hmm.
conversation that I had about something completely different.
And then you mentioned that you had other moments in mind as well. What could you elaborate a bit? I'm very curious.
So I think the next one would probably be the booking with Black Coffee at Warehouse Project. Um, that kind of came out of the blue, and like, because I worked in recruitment, and because I'd say I'm quite entrepreneurial, and I've got kind of like a sales mindset. Like, I was doing outreach, and I was messaging people, and I was pitching and trying to get gigs that way. But Warehouse Project, obviously, they I'd reached out to them before to be like, hey, can I play a set? Not in those words, but you know what I mean. But they actually got in touch with me, and asked me to be part of the lineup that Black Coffee was curating. So that was, I feel like when people think about bookings like that, it normally takes people like a good few years to get to that point. But I think just because I'd been in that space already, I knew a lot of the people that worked at Warehouse Project. I would be going to the events myself and, you know, networking with people there. So, yeah, I feel like, again, I was in the right place at the right time. And, you know, you have to sort of be in the right place at the right time for your name to be even in conversations like that. So, yeah, I'd say that's the other break that I can think of.
Looking at your journey, you know, from starting out during the lockdown to, you know, now you've warmed up for Black Coffee, as you said, Kerri Chandler, Disclosure. How, I wonder, because like, and this is not a sort of criticism question, it's more like I'm very curious because you also started with music production now. So like if you look at the traditional way, it's like, okay, someone starts out with the production, then they start gigging, and then you sort of like grow like a certain trust around the scene. But you bypassed that immediately and jumped straight there. So my question is, how did you get the people to trust you that quickly?
I think it is a case of, because I was a raver and a punter for so long, like I feel like I have a really good ear for good music. And to be fair as well, like before I even thought about being a DJ, whilst I was a child and a teenager, I used to do a lot of dancing, like pretty much every style of dance you can think of. I've tried it at some point. I think, again, that's probably, I've got ADHD, so I'm very like, I like to try loads of different things, and you know, as a kid I had loads of different hobbies, and when I think back now, a lot of them were very music centered. So I was dancing, or I was part of like vocal choirs or vocal groups, or you know, I used to sing and play guitar, play piano. So I feel like generally I've always sort of been around music. And then when I was old enough to go out and rave and party, that's when I started going out. But I do think, you know, probably half of my life I've spent raving and watching other people DJ, and I feel like I kind of learned what a good set sounded like, and I know what good music sounds like, and I feel like with music that I play, I have a rule where if it's a song that I don't love, and like I think to myself, if I never heard this track again, would I be bothered? And if the answer is no, I wouldn't be bothered, then I don't download it. So I feel like I love everything I play, and I feel like that comes across when I play as well. Like I genuinely am having the best time up there, and I'm, like I said to you before, I'm like, I can't believe people pay me to do this. But yeah, I think that's part of it, but also I do think it's, you know, the networking side of things, and you know, like when I speak to people, I'll never sort of ask them for anything. I just get to know people, and you know, try and build a relationship with them in a sense of, hopefully we can work together at some point, but that's not why I'm speaking to you. I'm interested to know who you are, and you know, to understand you as a person. And like I think the amount of people who I speak to who are, you know, promoters or people who have labels and stuff, like it's not, I feel like sometimes people are very selfish when it comes to trying to get gigs. Like they'll be like, I want to play a set for you, or you know, can I have a set? And it's like, well, why should I give you a set out of every DJ? Like every Tom, Dick, and Harry is a DJ at the minute. So why you? But I feel like I never ask for anything. I'm just maybe on people's minds when they start to have those conversations. But yeah, I think it's a combination of having like that music background and knowing what sounds good as a raver, to but also then, sorry. Yeah, so
He agrees.
Enzo wants his moment of fame.
Enzo
Um,
agrees. Love it.
I know. So yeah, I think it's a combination of like knowing what I think sounds good and loving everything that I play, but then also the networking. I think the 10 years of recruitment experience, I've almost just applied everything that I learned in sales from that aspect, but to getting gigs and getting bookings and doing outreach, pitching myself.
In a very authentic way because it has worked for you. So
I think so.
you've been doing radio shows as well. I'm very curious about that because that's also a way of networking, of inviting people, of interviewing people. Can you tell me a bit about what you're involved in with radio? Because I think there's different things, right?
Yeah, I've done quite a bit of radio now, but one thing I was going to actually talk about was, well, it's kind of like a two-part story, but I have a radio show on Reform Radio, which is a community-based radio station in Manchester. Um, but that kind of came about again because I think I was in the right place at the right time. So I was invited to their Christmas party with one of my friends who had a show on that station at the time, and they have like an open decks because obviously most people that have radio stations there can DJ as well. So it's kind of like everyone just brings a USB and everyone just plays a few songs. And yeah, the station manager at the time, I'd never met him before, but he kind of pulled me to one side and was like, "I liked the music that you played," and I was like, "Oh, that's cool. It'd be nice to sort of speak to you potentially about having a chance at a radio show here." And at Reform, most of the time, if you've never done a radio show on their station before, they give you what they call a takeover, where you'll maybe do like an hour or two, and it'll just be like a guest mix.
On someone else's show.
Well, they kind of just slot you into the programming.
Ah,
So
okay.
if you wanted to do someone else's, then you could do that. But I think they want to see that you're capable of kind of holding that space on your own as well. So he ended up giving me a takeover, and I was so scared that I didn't speak for 2 hours. I just was like, I'm just going to let the music
During
talk.
the radio show.
I just basically did a 2 hour mix, but I got good feedback, and they were like, "Yeah, we liked the show." So they invited me then to be a resident. So I have a show now. It's every 8 weeks, so it's hard to sort of pinpoint when it is, but it's every Thursday, every 8 weeks, if that makes sense. So my next one's actually on the 17th of April, a couple of days away. But after I got that show, I was like, right, I need to actually get comfortable speaking, and like, I wouldn't have been comfortable doing this sort of thing. Like back then, I was just kind of like, I'll just let the music talk, and I was quite nervous. Um, so I just kind of was mustering up the courage to talk a little bit more after every radio show I did, and after I'd done maybe two or three, I got invited to go on Rinse FM to do a guest mix, and in my head I was thinking, this is actually huge, but also thank God that I forced myself to talk on Reform Radio, because obviously in terms of numbers, like Reform do have a good like listenership and a good following, but like obviously nowhere near what Rinse FM does. But I thought in my head, I can't go on Rinse FM for 2 hours and not speak. That would just so like, I kind of feel like the Reform show helped me to be in a position to go on to Rinse FM and sort of speak more confidently on there, because had I not done Reform, I probably would have just again not spoke for 2 hours and just played music.
I love this story, honestly. That's such a good story. As it like, something that you can reflect back in the future and be like, this is how I grew from like being super shy to like, okay, now I'm, up here and I can actually do this thing.
But I think the thing is with me as well, like I wouldn't say that I'm a shy person, but I'm not a fan of like public speaking. Like I can be in a room with like a group of people, or I can be in a room one on one with people and speak and be comfortable doing it. But anytime that it's like I know that like hundreds of people or thousands of people are listening, that's when I like go a little bit insular. But I think having done things like that has made me more comfortable and more confident to do it now.
I totally get that, by the way. I worked a bit in sound engineering, and sometimes, like artists, the moment you turn on the recording button, it's a flip. Like the person changes completely.
Mm,
It's very, very like it has such a power over people. It's incredible
yeah,
sometimes, you know.
yeah. It is like you're performing all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you feel like you have the attention, like all eyes on you, and like you cannot mess it up, you know, because then
Mm,
you look dumb. But
exactly.
yeah, I totally get it. Like just a little red light or the microphone or a camera can change a person completely. I totally get that. What doors would you say radio opened for you? Maybe after that Rinse FM set that you did, the takeover.
Um, so, well, I don't know whether it opened doors for me specifically, but I just think it gives you like an air of credibility. So, like when rinse, but also reform, like after I'd had both of those opportunities, I would always sort of speak to people about it because I think it's a good way of promoting things. So like when I was on Rinse, for example, I was in London and I was playing at an event that night as well. So obviously I was speaking to people across London on the radio, and I was able to say, thanks for listening. I'm going to be playing at. It was my friend's night also. Then I was playing at, in London. I was like, if you like what you've heard, then feel free to come. Um, but I do just think that there's a credibility that comes with being able to say you've played on certain radio stations, but also it's an important promotional tool for me. Like whenever I've got a radio show, I'll always promote whatever sets and whatever gigs that I've got coming up. Um, and I just think it helps grow your Instagram following. It helps, um, when I was pitching, then I'd be saying, I was on Mix FM last month and I played X, Y, and Z, and I met these people, and I just think it. I couldn't tell you specifically what doors it opened for me, but I know it has. If that makes sense.
Yeah, 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 definitely. I wanted to touch a bit quickly on sort of like industry politics, so to say. Did you ever feel like in certain rooms, spaces? Because I feel like now you're navigating quite a lot. You're playing a lot of gigs. You're, on very different stages as well. Do you think that some opportunities and spaces were harder to access or were denied to you just, basically because of your gender or your skin color? Have you ever had that feeling or like a situation where something like that happened?
I don't think I have experienced it personally, but I do still find that some promoters and some events they book the same people repeatedly, or like say it's a promoter who is of a certain demographic, they'll book people who look like themselves. So I don't think it's like directed at me personally, but I do think that because certain people will have certain preferences about who they book, I'm not even in the picture for a lot of these events. Or I do think that sometimes it's a case of, they do want like to show that they're attempting to sort of be diverse and to be open minded with the bookings, and then maybe that's when I'll get booked, but it'll be the opening slot, or the I'll be back to back with someone else, and I feel like it's hard to sort of say that it's affected me, because I also think that potentially is the reason why I get booked a lot of the time. But yeah, I do think there's still a lot of work that can be done in terms of diversifying lineups generally. Like the amount of lineups I see where there's not a single woman or a single black person. But I think that some promoters either don't care or they're not looking to do it. So Yeah, it's a tough one because I do think I would definitely be excluded from certain lineups just generally because of who I am. But then I also do think that probably has opened some doors for me as well, and it's the reason that I have been booked sometimes.
It's also very difficult to pinpoint directly. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like how would you tell? Okay, it's because of that specifically and you specifically. But then
Mm.
also, from what you're saying, it's also a question of like, okay, some people just get booked because of their skin color and gender, just to for the promoters to look like they're diversifying just on purpose. And what you're saying, like also giving them the shittiest slots.
Mm.
So it's a very, yeah, I think. Do you think that it's going in a better direction, or that it's still like plateauing? Like what would you say?
From my point of view, it feels like it's improved, and that's just kind of since I've been DJing, so probably like a couple of years. So it definitely feels like it's improved, but I also do still think that there's a lot that can be done, and you know, I think I don't know whether you've seen any of it, but sometimes on social media, if a promoter has booked a lineup that's 99% male or a lineup that's 99% white, sometimes people will comment on it and say, you haven't really done much to diversify this lineup, and then people will comment back and say, well, women should be better DJs then, or this kind of thing. Like, or they'll say, the people in the lineup haven't been booked because of their skin color; they're booked because of their talent. And it's like, well, are you trying to say that there's not any talented women DJs?
Yeah, exactly.
There's not any talented DJs who are black? Like,
I
I
mean,
don't get what
the whole culture is based on that. So
exactly. So,
yeah,
like, I still think it's definitely improved, but I think sometimes when people are called out about it, they get defensive, and it's like we're not like whenever I've had that sort of conversation with someone, I'm not saying it from a point of like trying to upset you or trying to discredit your work, but if like just even think about diversity and have it like in your mind at some point, like we women shouldn't have to be commenting on lineups to get you to think about that. You should already kind of be thinking about it. So yeah.
yeah, it shouldn't be used as a tool to just balance things out either, because as you say, like there's a lot of female DJs that are talented, that are doing a lot of things. So
Mm.
yeah, the hesitation for it is a bit, yeah, like not really understandable. But you're also involved in collectives that are actively doing stuff like to how do you say, like who are involved in improving the situation. Like for example, Not Bad for a Girl. Can you tell
Hmm.
us a bit about that collective and what you guys are doing, what you're up to, what the plans are for this year?
Yeah, so it's actually really funny with Not Bad for a Girl because, like I mentioned before, they gave me my first ever set, and then like a couple of years later, I'm part of the collective. So it's a real full circle moment, but also the bulk of what we do as a collective is try to make electronic music more diverse, and obviously predominantly it's from a gender perspective. Like the name is what it is, and it is what it says on the tin, kind of thing. Like where we're wanting to make spaces more diverse and more sort of even comfortable for people like ourselves. Like I know that a lot of the people in the collective sometimes when they've gone to an event have felt like the only woman or the only person of color, and I think what we want to do is make it so that it doesn't feel like that. Like we shouldn't feel like an other at the
Like
events
an
that we go to.
outsider, yeah.
So a lot of what we do is we'll put on our own events, and predominantly we're booking women, we're booking non-binary people, we're booking people of color, we're booking queer artists, we're booking artists who are disabled or neurodiverse, and I think sometimes that could be seen as the diversity, but going the other way. And
Yeah,
sometimes our
I know
lineups,
what you mean.
they're diverse, but there's not many men on them, if any, because that's not what we're about. Like, there's enough lineups out there with loads of men on, or that are all men. So I think what we're trying to do is, create space for people who wouldn't ordinarily get those opportunities. But we've recently founded a record label as well. So the record label is called Equal Parts. And again, we're platforming women, we're platforming marginalised people, and, people who wouldn't necessarily be given those opportunities from some of the other labels out there. And, the music that we've put out so far has been amazing.
And you guys, you girls, you all have been an essential part of Manchester scene, and you yourself as well now are one. I'm curious why your decision was when you were thinking of DJing, why to stay in Manchester, whereas a lot of people move to bigger cities. Like the obvious one is like, oh, I'm gonna move to London and I'm gonna make it there. What
Mm-hmm.
was your decision when you like? What influenced your decision to stay in Manchester, whereas moving to a bigger city where there's potentially more opportunities, more people to connect with, more clubs and more parties?
Yeah, I think from my point of view, I'm a northerner. I just love the north of England. It's where I was born. I wasn't born in Manchester, but I've lived in Manchester for 10 years, and like I do just feel at home in the north of England. Like, I love visiting London and I love going there, and I love playing there. But um, yeah, I've always just lived up north. Um, I'm actually, potentially in talks about moving to London, but there's nothing sort of concrete. But I think the reason why I would do it now is because I feel like I've kind of done everything that I can do here. Like, there aren't many venues that I haven't played in that I want to play in. So it feels like the right time, potentially, if I was going to do it at any point, would be now or soon. Um, just because, yeah, I feel like there's a lot more for me to experience that's new in London now. Um, my agent's based in London, and he's got, links down there that, it might make sense for me to explore now. So yeah, that's kind of where I stand. But yeah,
Time
I'll
to
always be I'll
expand.
always be a northerner at heart. But I've also always said I wouldn't mind living in London just to experience it. But I know that I'd always end up coming back up north.
But also, do you feel like it's a better connection to make the step to an international like level?
Um, potentially, but then I do think that a lot of Manchester's got a very rich culture and a rich musical sort of heritage. So um, potentially, but I don't think it's hindered me at all being in Manchester. I think if anything, it's probably meant that I've done a lot of the stuff a lot more quickly than I would have done potentially in London, because London's huge compared to Manchester. Like, in Manchester, I feel like everyone kind of knows everyone, and it feels very collaborative. And I think because it is a smaller city, I've progressed a lot faster than I probably would have done had I been in London. Almost for me, it feels like a little bit of a springboard if I was to move to London, because I'd have the credibility of being able to say that I played at some of the biggest venues in Manchester. Whereas I think had I started down in London, I might not have done some of the bigger stuff yet.
And now it's time to expand and to look for more things to do. You also started your own label called Staple Music.
Yes,
So can you tell us a bit about it? Because because I haven't seen it yet. You haven't had a first official release yet, right?
it is in the works.
Okay,
Um,
tell us a
yeah,
bit about it.
so it's similar to what I described with Equal Parts. So my sort of vision for it, and I it's a record label, but for me, it's like a brand as well. Like I've done a few parties now under the brand, and like I see it again as a space for underrepresented people, but more on the house music genre. Whereas Equal Parts with Not Bad for a Girl is very, it's more kind of bass music and electronic music sort of generally. Whereas obviously my sort of where I feel most comfortable is house music, and what I'd sort of experienced was, turning up to events and being the only woman, or turning up to events and being the only black person. And I wanted to create a space where I wasn't the person who kind of stood out. I wanted it to feel more like, more inclusive. And so, yeah, the premise is kind of the same, but for house music, like I want to prioritize, and this is not to say that I won't sign any men, or I won't sign white artists. Like if the music's good, then I'll sign it. But I think for me, I want it to be somewhere where women are prioritized and people of color are prioritized, queer artists, disabled artists, because they're not necessarily getting the same opportunities to be in front of some of the other labels out there. Obviously, I haven't put any music out on it yet, so what happens we'll find out. But I want it to be, I want it to get to the point where it is, rivaling some of the big labels out there, but giving that platform to people who wouldn't necessarily have that opportunity.
You mentioned that you've already organized some events. What have you found to be the biggest challenge when putting up an event?
For me, the main challenge is because I do it on my own. Like I know a lot of people who, like the collectives, for example, and like with Not Bad for a Girl, everyone kind of mucks in and everyone has like jobs to do. Whereas the hardest thing I think for me with the staple music parties is that everything is my responsibility. So from the promotion to booking the artists to arranging the venue to, obviously for majority of them I play on the bill as well. So I have to prepare a set, and like it's a lot of responsibility I think for just one person. And when it's your event and when it's kind of your reputation and it's all of the effort that you've kind of put into it, you obviously want to make sure that it goes well and that people come. And I don't know whether you've put any events on yourself, but regardless of like whether it's your first one or your 10th one, sometimes it feels like people just aren't going to come, even though people have told you that they're going to come, people have bought tickets. You just still on the day will think no one's going to come.
You don't know until they're standing in front of you.
Yeah. So I think that's like one of the hardest things. It's like the self-doubt and like you're almost kind of questioning yourself about, have I done everything that I could have done? Have I, have I spent the right amount of money? Have I, is my set going to be all right? Like there's just so much to sort of think about and you just constantly question yourself. So like, I did the last one in February and I haven't got one booked because after I finished it, I was just exhausted. I was like, I need a bit of a break.
I can imagine, because also with today's scene, where like a lot of clubs have shut down, like grassroots clubs. I mean, in the UK alone, I think in the last 10 years, more than half of the clubs in the UK, I think, roughly, have closed down. It doesn't seem like you'll also get like a second chance if it goes wrong, the first time, which is a shame because, like, when you start your first event ever, what are the chances that it's going to be very, very successful? They're very small. It's something that you build up.
Yeah, well, it's also like I'm the sort of person where I learn by making mistakes, but I feel like sometimes you feel like you can't even make a mistake because you might, if you make a mistake that's too big, you might not get the opportunity to play at that venue again or to book that artist again. So it's kind of like you kind of do just feel like you have one shot, and am I allowed to swear?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I feel like you feel like you can't fuck it up. Like you get one chance and that's it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Let's talk a bit about your music, like your songs, because you said that it's in the works. I'm very curious. Um, can you talk about the first release, like anything that's coming out?
Yeah, so the first release is actually one of my own, and um, it's kind of funny how it's happened. But I when I played the set for Black Coffee at Warehouse Project, I played one of my own songs, and I played one of my own songs out for the first time, and that mix is now on Apple Music. But because the song was unreleased at the time, it just says ID one, track one. Like it doesn't actually say my name or what the track's called. So I've had to end up like I'm signed with a distributor now to release the song basically, but that's going to be kind of Staple Music 001 because I need to kind of put it underneath some sort of branding. Um, so yeah, that's kind of happened accidentally. But I also have a track that's signed with Equal Parts, which is the Not Bad for a Girl label. So that's more of like a garagey kind of number. And then I have got another track which is sat with a couple of very exciting labels. I'm not going to say anything more than that because I'm quite superstitious with things like that. I feel like if I say it out loud, it won't come true. So,
We won't jinx it.
no. But if it gets signed with either of the labels that it's sat with right now, I would be very happy.
Fingers crossed, fingers crossed.
Mm.
What else is next for you in terms of gigs? Have you got any wind of maybe an international gig already? How is that
Um,
looking?
so in terms of what's next, I'm playing Quinn Bites, which is Dennis Quinn's event at XOYO in London. That's this weekend, and I'm very excited for that. Um, in terms of international stuff, there's nothing concrete, but I'm in a couple of conversations. If things go my way, I potentially will be playing in Ibiza and Amsterdam this year. So that again is all I will say. I don't want to give too much away.
Ibiza's a bit more closer to me, so and I've
Uh,
just been to Amsterdam, so maybe Ibiza it is.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed, yeah. That sounds amazing. It sounds like your 2025 is going great and it is about to step up as well.
Hopefully, my plan is always I always want to try and get like bigger and better bookings and kind of just be on a gradual increase. So yeah, that's the plan.
Abby, thank you very much for your time. It was a
Thanks for
very
having
lovely
me.
chat. It was very good to hear from your journey, to learn from your journey as well. And I personally, I cannot wait to see your name somewhere here in Barcelona.
Yeah,
So we can link up also in person. That would be great.
yeah.
By the way, which reminds me, are you gonna be here for Sonar?
Potentially, my
As in, like,
only
not necessarily gig wise, just in general.
so I wanted to come because one of my friends she actually played at the last Stable Music event, but um, she's playing at Off Sonar, so I was gonna hopefully try and come, but it's around the same time that I'm playing at Park Life, so I don't know whether I'll be able to do both. So I need to try and figure it out. But yeah, I would like to come and potentially if I can sort out a booking for myself, that might be nice as well. But we'll see. But yeah, I would like to come, so I'll let you know if I do.
Let's definitely link up if it happens.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for your time. I'll be in touch, and yeah, as I said, hopefully we'll see you on a bill here in Barcelona soon.
thank you. I'd love that. Take care. Thanks.